All right, so let us get to the co-main event. Belal, remember the name, Muhammad gets it done. I thought he won all 5 rounds against Gilbert Burns, whose left shoulder was compromised in round 1. And let me just say this about the interpersonal nature of this fight. There's an emotional investment for a lot of us. You can't help but get close to these athletes. I'm exceedingly close with a lot of these fighters. Even Matt the Steamroller Favola, even though my relationship with Drew Dober goes all the way back to the live season of The Ultimate Fighter in 2012. Matt Favola has been on the podcast a million times. I have an intimate relationship with his father, his twin brother. He trains under Ray Longo. You're going to develop friendships. Doesn't mean it's going to bleed into the call. But let me just tell this audience, if I may, if I were to invite 10 UFC fighters to my second wedding, if I get divorced and married again, hopefully that doesn't happen. Gilbert Burns and Belal Muhammad are 2 of those 10. But we launched a shoulder program on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube channel about 2 years ago, and we wanted to find a fighter who was on the rise, who we thought could make a run to contention, but didn't necessarily have a huge following. We wanted to make sure we had a fighter who would show up 40-plus times a year to do the show. Belal Muhammad was the guy that you, me, and Cody settled on. We handpicked him. He was unranked at the time. He had like 8,000 Instagram followers, and now Belal Muhammad is fighting for the championship. And fuck if I'm not allowed to be happy about it. I'm disappointed for Gilbert, obviously. I'm hoping that his shoulder is okay. Yeah. But Belal Muhammad has worked for this title shot essentially for 15 years. He put all chips in the center of the table with an injured left foot. He knew that this big fight against Gilbert Burns may not materialize if he didn't take it here and now. He did. He wins it. And now he's undeniable.
I mean, you didn't leave me a whole lot of room there, man. You summed it up. You summed it up beautifully. I mean, what else can you say after that? What's so interesting about Belal is that, you know, he's this guy, and I'm just being really honest. You look at his game, you're like, there's nothing that really stands out. You know, there's nothing that wows you. He just knows how to win rounds, and he is one of the most intelligent fighters inside the octagon that I've ever seen. He always has the right approach and then executes on that approach. This is not easy to do at the highest level, okay? And he has done it in a lot of ways quietly, little by little, and I think that's another reason why I've kind of slept on him. And man, I mean, how many times do I need to say he has wowed me and surprised me? He has done this throughout his career, and I know I'm not the only one, but talk about all the things outside of it, John, like we talked about. This was already a close fight for me. I wasn't sure which way I was going to go, but all those things coming off of Ramadan, 3 weeks to prepare for a 5-round fight, and then you add on that other layer of an injured ankle. Like, come on, who's going to do that? And who's going to do that against a Gilbert Burns? Well, Belal Muhammad is. He's that guy. And that is just amazing to me that throughout all those hurdles, and all those hiccups and all the adversity that he has dealt with, all the ups and downs, because he has had them throughout those wins, to see what he has accomplished in the UFC and the manner in which he has done it is remarkable. And he's one of those guys, man, that I think you have to respect no matter whether he goes on to be a world champion in this sport. He's going to be one of those guys that I think if you're smart, if you are a hardcore, and if you are paying attention to this sport, he is one of those guys that will go down as one of the best welterweights that I've seen compete. Just phenomenal stuff.
Ray Longo often says of Georgian Merab Dvalishvili, his student, that he's already won. And I think by winning this fight for Belal, not unlike Merab, he's already won whether he wins the title or not, right? I don't think anybody wanted to give him anything. He was going to have to earn everything, and looked like they wanted to do Belal Muhammad against Shavkat Rakhmonov, and maybe if he won that fight, he would have gotten the Gilbert Burns fight. So he had no choice but to take this fight. But it does make sense now. Why would Belal want this fight at 185 pounds? Excuse me. That didn't make sense to any of us, right?
Yeah.
Because he's so mentally forged. You know he can cut the weight. He made the weight with an injury. But then it started to make sense. Oh, maybe he wanted the fight at 85 because he had a bad wheel. Now, it doesn't seem as though the Gilbert Burns injury was pre-existing. Perhaps a byproduct of just biting off more than he can chew. He fought in January, then fought in April a few weeks ago. Third fight on pay-per-view in a span of 106 days. And Belal Muhammad's a tough guy to fight over 5 rounds to begin with, never mind not having a training camp.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, imagine what he would have done if he had a full training camp and he was injury free. Again, I certainly would have gone his way if he did have the full training camp. But I think the real difference here, and probably the real difference against probably everyone in that division, is the intelligence of Belal. He knows how to approach it. I also think that his team and coaches should get a lot of credit here because, man, they've turned him into an absolute strategist of the highest quality. And again, it's also on the athlete and the fighter to go out and execute, and he just knows how to do that. He knows how to do that when the pressure is on, even when the circumstances are suboptimal. And, man, he had a lot of knocks against him, a lot of things going against him in this fight. And, man, did he pull it off. Gilbert just wasn't able to adjust. And, of course, he did have that bum shoulder, which obviously affected his performance. But, he was throwing some right hands that did catch Belal. Belal has a tremendous chin. But he just wasn't able to deal with those stance switches, man. Every time you switch a stance, it's one thing because your brain has to calibrate. You can't just go forward and go, I'm going to throw this shot. Every single time someone switches their stance, you have to also switch your capability of what you're going to throw, how you're going to throw it, right? Because you may get caught with a shot that's on the opposite side. And not only was Belal switching stances like every single exchange, he'd switch stances, then he'd attack, or he'd switch stances and he'd feint. He was always doing something, and Gilbert's mind just could not handle it. He was not able to keep up with that speed of thought and that speed of stance switches. And Belal just kind of looked like the teacher, and Gilbert looked like the student. No offense to Gilbert, but he just looked like he was being strung along, and it was pretty to watch.
And part of the reason Gilbert Burns maybe flipped the strategy and went for the takedown that resulted in the injury was because Belal Muhammad was getting a whole lot done on the feet. And quickly, I do want to say genetically, Belal Muhammad has a lot of physical gifts that really help him in mixed martial arts. That huge head that can take a shot, and also that bull-legged nature down low. I've never seen a fighter absorb that many calf kicks in a fight and have that much redness on both their legs inside and out and be totally unfazed, not even so much as a limp.
Dude, a few things. First of all, he looked big. He looked massive in there. I mean, Gilbert looked like a lightweight, and he looked like a legit welterweight. I think the calf kicks that he was taking is important to notice. It looked like it was not a big deal. And then after the 5 rounds, dude, was he even breathing? It looked like it looked like he just did a workout. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, hands on the quads. Like, I'm so thankful I got through that fight. It looked like it was like he prepared for that. He looked fine, which is just insane given the circumstances. So
really fucking bad night for the Belal Muhammad haters, right? And the notion that there's no risk in fighting Gilbert Burns because he's rendered a one-arm fighter after round 1 is just absurd. There's still risk mitigation that has to happen. I hear this avalanche of criticism. Oh, Belal Muhammad wasn't able to put him away. Like, you got to put that guy away. Easier said than done. You got to prioritize the win. I want to quickly read a tweet, and then we are going to get to the great Ray Longo. This one from MMA Fighting's Sean Al-Shadi. Belal Muhammad just risked 5 years of momentum on short notice against a true killer in a spot where his title hopes would have been forever tanked with a loss. Whether you enjoyed it or not, that man is a proper number 1 contender and deserves his respect.